So what it started a year out with was this whole grand research idea with multimodal architectures and bridging multiple mediums together, but all of that didn't seem as useful to me, so I thought to my life and trying to figure out something that would be much more useful as a quest, but bringing in all those pieces of machine learning that I've been working so much on over the past few years into something that's more practical. And to tell this story, we need to go way back. You see, in late 2019, there's a group of people that came together that put a bunch of notes together. The system was called Taproot and was built on a bunch of markdown files, which are a series of note-taking files that you use just plain text, and you can use any software to edit. We used Obsidian to be able to compile these notes together and link to each other. Taproot would work kind of well in the sense that we're able to bridge in a lot of these unique ideas and link to each other's notes with that scheme, but to be honest, it wasn't that accessible and it required a whole sort of 30-minute setup process, which was frankly really annoying. So that whole system got moved towards something called Taproot 2, which is a better system that essentially involved a whole lot of engineering that I won't talk about right now to get a lot of people's nodes syncing and building together. We're able to have web support, which is still online here, which included a bunch of information compiled and re-rendered as a website, so that although you may not be taking notes of this system, you're able to look at the notes that are already being shared. One of the things that worked really, really well about Taproot was the fact that the nodes linked to each other. It was what's called a Zettelkasten, meaning that the nodes had atomic ideas, which means that each node contained a single idea instead of being about a lecture or about a specific date. And those nodes linked together as we see fit. For instance, when the idea of, say, eigenvalues are mentioned, the eigenvalue node would be linked to any time that eigenvalues are mentioned. And this is a really powerful way of being able to connect and jump to ideas really quickly. I really love the idea of being able to link these nodes together and being able to bridge these ideas together in what we call a Zettelkasten. So I set out to create, well, the Platonic note-taking system. To start all this process, I began by using something called GNU Emacs, which is a piece of software which you can essentially write code for to build anything you want out of anything you want. And of course, I started out with the nicest note platform we can find, which is just another plain text called org mode, and we included, in the beginning, LaTeX support right off the bat. But next up is when the linking situation became interesting. You see, Emacs is a code editor, so we can actually use its autocomplete feature to actually prompt for the existing notes in the system. So as long as I take notes in an atomic format where each note file is indeed corresponding to one topic, we can essentially just have the autocomplete usually used for code to prompt what exactly I am typing right now and automatically link to the right note on my behalf. And this really powerful system generated this graph, which you can scroll through and appreciate the sheer beauty of that fact that having maintained this system for 3 to 4 years, you can see this large network of small bits of information all connected to each other, and it was working very well. But wait, hold on. See, despite the amazingness that this graph looks like, it's honestly kind of useless. You see, I spent a lot of time wasting my time digging through that graph, and to be honest, it doesn't give me much benefits. Most of the time, this graph right there gives nothing more but things you already know that, oh, these two concepts are connected. Because you can't get anything out of this. The graph doesn't tell you anything inherently, it's just a pretty picture of how things are connected. All in all, my notes weren't very discoverable. In fact, people had single links to pages, but they weren't being able to look up information in a real way, and neither was I. And so, this year, I set out on a quest to use all those machine learning technologies to make my notes more discoverable. I started out with search, and search, you can find it everywhere. It's on Google, it's on everywhere, it's on DuckDuckGo. Any single website that's ever been in existence anywhere has search. And search sounds really simple. You type in a box and you get the answers that match the most, but the devil's in the details here. Search is actually really, really hard to make, especially when you don't have an existing way of indexing and finding the order of the things that you should present your notes with. For instance, in my case, we can search on the titles and the notes very easily, but that's actually kind of a non-starter because my note titles don't correspond to what the contents are. The notes on eigenvalues that I referred to before was titled 1D invariant subspaces. A lot of notes are jammed on top of other notes, and they don't actually have a dedicated note for themselves. So if I just search on title for the closest string match, we're not going to get anywhere. And the obvious next step to this is String Match for full text search, which was what I had for a long time. On the website, you can still see the search bar, and that gives you a text search where you can put in a word and get a bunch of results corresponding to that word. And those aren't bad, but they aren't good either. The search algorithm right there is just simple string matching, which means that as long as the strings were overlapping, I'm going to give you the top result. And the more overlaps there are, the higher the result goes. Now we're kind of fine, but honestly, I like to search by asking questions. And that's not a thing this can provide. The text of the question could be very different from what the title or the content of the note said. But we have to start somewhere, and I remember this tool called Elastic, which was actually pretty popular to do a lot of indexing with search. And in fact, a lot of search you see on websites use something called Elastic. Well, after some digging, I learned that Elastic used something called BM25, what is essentially a way of searching your strings in a much more smart way. This begins by taking your text and tokenizing it, splitting it into groups such that each individual group contains some functional meaning. And for this, I took my own favorite algorithm and the one that my friends had heard me harping on about for a long time, byte pair encoding. Byte pair encoding is very useful for breaking certain words down into its constituent parts, especially when those parts are repeated a lot. For this implementation, I took GPT-2's encoding algorithm, which is the version of GPT, the ones they've heard about recently, from many years ago, but its encoding algorithm still suffices, and honestly the modern version of GPT used about the similar version of the same corpus. The encoding algorithm in hand, those subwords are matched with BM25 using something called TF-IDF, which is an algorithm for determining how important a word is based on its frequency of appearance in a single document and across all the documents. Of course, if a word appears a single time in most other documents, but appear like 50 times in one document, then we probably know that that document is much more relevant. But instead of words, we are going to use these byte pair encoded results as we said before. But that's not done yet. Although we may have the right documents to match, we still don't have the correct responses. And that's because natural language prompts are still hard to understand. If I ask you what is the definition of a linear map, and we have to strip out all of those words that aren't necessary and just look for a linear map, and then go through my 300 word note to find the one sentence that serves as a good definition. And this is a question answering problem, which is a type of machine learning that deals with taking text and trying to answer questions about that text. There are two main types of question answering. There's extractive question answering, where a machine learning model tries to cite bits of the original text to be able to answer the question. And there is the abstractive question answering, which essentially tries to come up with a new answer given the reference text wholesale, generating a new response just like the new GPT models. And I opted to use extractive question answering for the project here because, well, the GPT model loves to hallucinate and loves to make things up. And although this new model from extraction is nowhere faultless, it will not wholesale make completely new things up, as it is necessarily citing only the original text found in my note system. And from there, those citations are generated and exported to a lovely page on the website where you can type in the query and it will give you a response. This is powered by something called Roberta, which is a variant of a model called BERT, which is a model that actually performs very well on the common question answering benchmarks. Thank you very much for listening, and check out my notes.